Hello and welcome. I am Brian Gottlieb, and this is a deck tech. This is a deck that I am quite excited about. If you followed me on social media, if you've been paying attention to our YouTube feed here on the Arena Decklist YouTube channel, you probably know by now I won Fandom Legends just yesterday now. And I did it with an archetype that I don't think was on a lot of people's radar, although it certainly should have been if you listen to our podcast. I am, of course, talking about Esper Dance of the Manse. This is a deck that first came to my attention after it was played in the streamer showcase by Andrew Cuneo. He was quite pleased with it. And then Andrei Strosky took it over, tweeted that he thought it might be the best deck in Standard. I'm unsure if I'm going to go that far. Obviously, it put forth quite a result in my hands in the Fandom Legends tournament, so I'm high on it right now. Best deck in Standard. Too early to say anything like that. I want to see some more of the other decks that are out there, some more of the other things people are working on. But regardless, if you have a tournament coming up in these early weeks of Standard, I think this is a very powerful strategy for a lot of reasons. And I'm going to get into that as we move through these cards on a card-by-card basis. I've kind of broken things up here by different card types, and we'll start with talking about our engine. And our engine is based around the combination of eggs, offering you an egg in these trying times, a golden egg. And Guild Globe, not quite a traditional egg, but it is a 2-mana artifact that comes into the battlefield and draws you a card. We commonly refer to these as eggs. These interact beautifully with your other key cards, the first of which is Doom Foretold. This is a card that I think everyone slept on come spoiler season. This one-sided, well, it's not quite one-sided. The way you build your deck, you make it one-sided. This sacrifice effect causes players to sacrifice non-land, non-token permanents. And that is the real big kicker of Doom Foretold. I think a lot of people read this card, assume it interacts unfavorably with all the tokens floating around Standard. It doesn't. It gets right to your opponent's meaningful cards. It cleans up Planeswalkers. It cleans up Experimental Frenzies. It cleans up lands that have been targeted with Oko's ability, in fact. Doom Foretold just obliterates absolutely everything. It serves as your card advantage engine, and you get rebuys with the namesake card of the deck. It is, of course, Dance of the Manse. Return up to X target artifact and non-aura enchantment cards with converted mana cost X or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. If X is 6 or more, those permanents are 4/4 creatures in addition to their other types. So, our KO is usually just Dance of the Manse 4/6. There are very few other ways to win in this deck. That is certainly the focal point we're working towards here. But there's spots where you're just going to cast Dance of the Manse for X is 4, and you bring back Doom Foretold, you bring back a couple of eggs, you draw a couple cards, maybe an Oath of Kaya is in there, do a little damage, gain a little life, and all of a sudden the game is completely insurmountable for your opponent. This engine interacting together, it's proactive, it's powerful, and the best thing about it, it slots beautifully into what looks like a traditional Esper control shell. As you move into the rest of the cards here, you see our removal spells. We get to still play Legion's End, clean up all those Field of the Dead tokens that might be sneaking around. We have a new card in Murderous Rider, basically a new Hero's Downfall, killing any target creature or planeswalker. And then it's all the traditional answers you would expect from an Esper control deck. Oath of Kaya, Kaya's Wrath to just deal with wide battlefields. And Planar Cleansing is a bit of a new pickup, can clean up any huge problematic planeswalker-based board states your opponents may have put together, and then you just deploy your Doom Foretold to make the game very difficult to win for them. Oath of Kaya, obviously very nice here for its synergies alongside Dance of the Manse, another card that will be returned, but also this is just a powerful spell. And it's interesting now, for 2 standards in a row, we're seeing powerful archetypes based around recurring Oath of Kaya. Of course, in the last standard, the Kethis deck, which eventually took over the entire format, also had the ability to rebuy Oath of Kaya, use it as a win condition. Now we see Dance of the Manse getting up to the same old tricks. As far as other forms of disruption here in the Esper deck, also looking at the classic counter spells, Dovin's Veto, in small numbers here, only 1 in my main deck right now. I do have a couple more copies in the sideboard when we get there. I like it as a change of pace. When you get your opponent's first spell with Dovin's Veto, you'll certainly slow them up, have them thinking about future spells that are vulnerable to Dovin's Veto, even when you only have 1 in the main deck. I played 1 in Fandom Legends just because I think there's a huge amount of value in your opponents knowing this card is in your deck. But even if I wasn't in a deck with open deck lists, or in a tournament with open deck lists, I'd still happily be playing a copy of Dovin's Veto. 3 Thought Erasures. That's a weird number. I get it. And you can make a good case that you should have 4 Thought Erasures in the deck. Slots are tight. I am not sure that I'm willing to abandon any of the other cards I presently have in the list for the 4th Thought Erasure. You got to make sacrifices somewhere, and your 2 mana slot is very occupied. You're often deploying an egg, deploying a Guild Globe, so you can set up for your turn 4 Doom Foretold, which will just run away with the game in so many situations. If you haven't played with this deck, as soon as you cast your first Doom Foretold, you will understand what I'm talking about. It just puts your opponents in a vice grip basically as soon as the game starts. And as you buy more and more time, you're just building to that large Dance of the Manse. And of course, the best card in Standard. Nothing has changed, folks. Teferi, Time Raveler, still the best card in Standard, I promise. Oko may be starting to push into that territory a little bit, but Teferi just changes games. And this proactive combo kill is so much more efficient when you're able to deploy it on your opponent's end step and give them no chance to react to what you're doing whatsoever. Beyond that, Teferi just generates card advantage. It buys time. It's the key card in the deck. The deck quite possibly wouldn't exist without it. And I'm sorry if you thought you were getting out from the oppressive reign of Teferi in this Standard. It's not going anywhere. Teferi's sticking around. We move to our mana base. Pretty straightforward stuff here. We can max on our Scry lands. You do see 4 Temple of Silence. That's important both to cast Archaea's Wrath and because we have a lot of mana inefficiency in our early turns. So you're pretty happy playing a tapped land, getting some filtering. Also, obviously, our deck is based around a pretty key interaction. We will need to find our Dance of the Manse at some point. Temple of Silence can accelerate that process. And to that effect, I've also included a single copy of Castle Vantress. Does a great job once you reach those top decking situations to just end the game. It was backbreaking for me in so many matches yesterday. I would just stabilize. I'd quite frankly be out of gas and vulnerable to opponent top decking. But if I had Castle Vantress in play, the window closed so quickly. And of course, the other new piece in our mana base, you see 3 copies of Fabled Passage, the fixed Terramorphic Expanse or Evolving Wilds. Just a good, efficient way to clean up your mana base, complemented by our 5 basics we play here. Moving to the sideboard, let's talk what we have going on here. You need some tools to keep up with aggro matchups. I think the aggro matchup is fine. In my top 8 match, I played against red-black aggro in the hands of Andre Strosky. As long as you are on the play, you feel pretty comfortable. The draw gets a little hairy, so maybe it's quite die roll dependent, but we do have some tools to fix that in our post-board games. You do see a copy of Disfigure, a copy of Legions, and just good quality removal spells we can lean on against aggressive decks. Sometimes you'll want to despark. It depends exactly what the makeup is of the opposing aggressive deck. Cry of the Carnarium, also excellent in those matchups. And you just see one more Wrath in our sideboard for times when we need to have 6 Wrath effects, a single Realm Cloaked Giant hanging out there. I was so impressed with this card all day. Having your win condition stapled onto the back of your Wrath effect. Really powerful stuff. I would not cut this Realm Cloaked Giant, even if it looks a little odd and out of place here. Talking about a few other spells we have in our sideboard. You see Duress. Duress, just good, clean magic. Any kind of control matchup, you'll bring this in. Any kind of mirror match, you certainly want access to Duress. It's the type of effect where if we had more space, we'd probably be looking at more copies of Duress. But I think for the time being, I'm willing to trend a little bit lower, only 2 copies. We'll see if this deck really takes off in the metagame. If so, you may want to up your Duress count. Moving on to the Elder spell. Again, absolutely essential for me yesterday. The big breakout deck, maybe besides this Esper deck in Fandom Legends, was either Bant or Simic-based Planeswalker strategies, focused around Nissa, focused around Oko, sometimes including copies of Teferi. As long as those 3 Planeswalkers are out in large numbers, you would do well to pack your copies of the Elder spell. I'd also note that going forward, Tamiyo is a very good card against this deck. Obviously, its static ability prevents opponents from sacrificing things and also shuts off your Thought Erasures, Duresses, and Elder Spell is just another nice out to Tamiyo. More copies of Dovin's Veto in the sideboard. Same argument as Duress, basically. Anytime you need to disrupt your opponent, you will look to lean on Dovin's Veto. 2 Despark. I talked about this a lot if you watched my matches. I played Disenchant instead. I was an idiot. Don't be an idiot. Play Despark. It cleans up the giant artifacts that are looming around Standard right now. The Great Henge being one, Cauldron of Eternity another one. Having Despark is just a clean answer to that. 100% what you're looking for. And then there's other random spots where it comes up. You'll kill a Nissa with it. You'll pick off an Arclight Phoenix. Just a very high value card in the present standard environment. This one copy of Unmoored Ego, I'm a little less sold on. If the mirror is going to be popular, you're pretty happy taking away your opponent's Dance of the Manse. Also, Field of the Dead decks do still exist. If you're lucky and you find Unmoored Ego very early, it's a fine strategy there. But I think this really segues well into the next card in my sideboard, and it's an interesting one. But if I expect people to pick up this deck list and to do things like play Unmoored Ego and Ashiok, as I did in my Fandom Legends deck, I'm looking for a change of pace. And I think I found a good one here. And I won't say I found it, because actually Dan Jessup showed up in my chat while I was playing Fandom, and basically just one line, what do you think of Aaliyah? And I sat there and I thought about it, and it turns out I think quite highly of Aaliyah, Artful Provocateur. If you haven't seen this card, it's because it's one of the new Brawl commanders. And it synergizes so well with the rest of your deck. 2/3 flying, Death Touch, Lifelink. Other creatures you control with flying get +1/0. But more importantly, whenever you cast an artifact or enchantment spell, create a 1/1 blue fairy creature token with flying. And the way I would play the mirror right now is I would just board in Aaliyah. Obviously, Aaliyah can be answered by Doom Foretold, but all those tokens you're going to make not going to be answered, and I would expect opponents to sideboard out large amounts of their removal presently in the mirror matchup. So if you're going to be on ladder playing this deck, this is the move I like. I really like going to Aaliyah, Artful Provocateur for those matchups. So that about does it for this deck tech. I wholeheartedly endorse this deck. Obviously, coming off a win, it would be hard not to, but it's also a ton of fun to play and does a great job exploring new synergies present in Throne of Eldraine. So if you're looking for something to pick up in your Week 1 ladder games, look no further than Dance of the Manse. If you enjoyed this deck tech, look down below. You can do the like, share, subscribe stuff, and keep following what we're doing here on Arena Decklist YouTube page.